Hey, thanks for tuning in to DeFi Lunch. Today we're doing something a little different. We're broadcasting new episodes of the Mission DeFi podcast so we can do some work and catch up on some other things. Hope you enjoy this. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be doing this for the next few days. Take care.
So I don't know what Luna's at today, like $40 billion market cap or
Yeah,
something,
I don't
where
know.
the biggest DeFi protocol is like $5 billion or $10 billion. So Luna can come into DeFi. Luna's real product is UST, they're a $40 billion protocol with a $16 billion stablecoin. That's their product is the stablecoin. So then they can come in, they're valued as a layer one. They come into the ecosystem. They have a ton of money to throw around. They come into DeFi and now they can they can really take a crack at trying to upset the current balance of DeFi and curve liquidity. So I see that as this weird, they can threaten DeFi in a way that other DeFi protocols can't.
Welcome to Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel, where we explore projects in decentralized finance that are innovating and driving our mission of financial freedom forward. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, and review Mission DeFi and spread the word by posting a tweet to the show. All opinions expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests are their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Black Knox, Material Indicators, or any other affiliated organizations. You should not treat any opinion expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests as an inducement to make a particular investment, follow a particular strategy, or become involved with any project. A project being featured on the show is not an endorsement of that project in any way. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Now, here's Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel.
Today's guest is Jack Niewold. Jack is a researcher and a writer, a Twitter influencer in the DeFi and crypto space. He likes to stir things up and has some strong opinions on projects and crypto and where things are going. This interview went a little differently than our normal one. He and I just started talking. And so we get to his background later on in the show, but I think you'll learn a lot from Jack about not only his opinions on projects and crypto and where it's going, but also how he built his successful business, Crypto Pragmatist. So hope you enjoy it. Thanks for listening. I hope you have a great day. And please, if you get a chance, like, subscribe, share anything you can on Apple Podcasts or on YouTube, your thoughts about the podcast itself.
I've just brought on an employee number one who has
Okay.
upside participation in February full time.
Nice. That's cool. How's that working out?
Really good. He actually just came down to visit me in Mexico last week. We had a really
Nice.
He's a super good guy. He's got a really strong traditional finance background. We got a lot of similarities in terms of international sensibilities. So he's actually headed off to Portugal in a couple of weeks. So it's a lot of fun. And I think we're like-minded in a lot of ways, but also he's got a bit more of a TradFi mindset, which is sometimes good in crypto in terms of staying skeptical about stuff.
Yeah, I think we could probably I could personally use a little bit more of that. So
Right.
I definitely, it's funny. I was just listening to the guys at Yunt Capital in the car on the way home. And I don't know if you're familiar with Yunt or not, but they came out of Alchemix, not as members of the project, but they were members of the community. And it was like 18 guys that just all were busting chops and putting out memes and being stupid in the community, but they were all really smart guys. And Saf, the guy who basically formed it, they created basically an investment group, right? And they're investing early stage seed, private rounds in projects together as a group. formed a DAO out of Wyoming and the whole bit. Anyway, they have a podcast and I'm listening to Seth on the way home ranting about, would you hire your neighbor to create an antibiotic for you? What the hell do we think real human beings have any qualifications to be voting on governance for financial models in DAOs? I don't understand it. This is insane. And he's like ranting. And I'm like, dude, you must. So I think there's like something happened with a project they're invested in and they don't like something that got passed. They're not saying the project name, but he's like ranting. We're idiots if we think that people are qualified. The masses are qualified. I don't ask you to write code if you've never written code. It's just going on. Oh man, dude, that's hilarious.
That's a good point. I wonder, definitely remember seeing some of that stuff around Solidly where like the short-term optimal play was completely different than the long-term optimal one. And that led to like huge rifts in the community, right? But maybe that actually presents some like a compelling case for vote escrow models where you have to lock up your tokens to have some type of say.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Like, are they
Right.
willing to lock in the long term to actually vote? Definitely agree with that. Definitely agree with that. I interviewed a guy, the founder of a project called Paladin, and they're lending governance votes. So like they have this financial model built into it to lend out. So like the original, I think, concept that he had was that protocols that really want to get something passed basically buy enough votes to get something through and have enough of a quorum or whatever to pass something.
I actually follow them. I've heard of the organization or the protocol. But man, yeah, I'm bullish on these governance models because I see them as like very crypto native, and governance obviously doesn't feel crypto native, but like I think in a lot of cases in traditional finance, like shareholders meetings, electing board members, that's really theater. But like for something like Curve or like Solidly, maybe if Solidly would have panned out a little bit better, it would have come into fruition a bit more. But like something like Curve Convex, people are they're actually willing to pay for your governance vote. Definitely, I think there are cool models around governance and like the actual value of governance and like whether it's bribes or whether it's some type of protocol trying to get a token to influence some third party, or there's a lot of interesting models. I think that crypto governance will end up being a new primitive, and we're starting to see rumblings about that. But it's a thesis I'm pretty bullish on.
Nice. I want to go down this rabbit hole a little bit with you.
Sure, absolutely.
You know, I was thinking as Seth was speaking, when I was listening to him, I was thinking conceptually, I can agree that sometimes people voting on particular aspects of development or product in a protocol could be a little risky. But at the same time, I also have a general belief in the wisdom of crowds. And the interesting thing I thought of was I was driving and that was happening. I thought, I think part of what needs to happen is a lot of times, if you look at the Alchemix proposals, and I'm just quoting the ones I've read, like some of those at Olympus, those people will actually spend a large amount of time writing out detailed kind of analyses of the impacts of what they're proposing, right? And giving a little more insights into what may or may not happen. And then I look at the community response and all the people who are smart enough and adept enough to understand the complexity of what's being proposed will weigh in and say, what about scenario A? What about scenario B? What could happen, et cetera, et cetera. So I actually think that there is a place for these kinds of votes, depending on what level they get to. And I also think that from my perspective, I'm a big believer that DAOs can transform a lot more than just DeFi. And so
Right.
finance in general, I actually believe this is going to have an impact far outside of this eventually. And that we're just the sandbox, the experimentation realm for how we change how organizations function to some extent, and may end up just like stock votes and public company votes, but governance. But I actually think that once the genie's out of the box, people are going to be more engaged in this. And certainly a lot of the DAOs have issues with participation, et cetera, but I'm not willing to close the door on the experiment. And I'm also think we have to figure out the parameters. But the other thing I was thinking is somebody like you that writes analysis and reports, people that are doing that, that's in another entire niche industry, right? Is maybe protocols hire every time there's a proposal that's technical or complex financially, that they hire as part of the proposals they're putting forth a couple of folks like you and other people that will actually go in and do an analysis of what the potential impacts are.
I definitely see this idea of like activist governance that is coming to the forefront in crypto. And I think one place where I saw it was actually like the Wonderland finance collapse, where we thought, I forget what his name was, but he was like super vocal about not dissolving the treasury, which I was in support of the treasury dissolution. I thought that was like the cleanest way to get people some of their money back. But he was super like anti this proposal, this specific proposal. And I think he got his way. So, sure, there's definitely like this activist governance, especially with people who have influence or people who are seen as clever. And I think founders, you have to organize around someone, because I think founders definitely get the benefit of the doubt in a lot of governance, where they just throw up a proposal, they say, here's why we should do it. But I think there's definitely a case for activist governance as well. And maybe there are some like third party rallying points, whether that's like people who run other protocols or stakeholders or notable personalities in the space that can accomplish that. It's an interesting model for kind of creating more dialogue or more subtlety to governance. The other thing I will say about why I'm bullish on this kind of governance thesis and creating governance power for tokens is because a stock only has limited utility, right? Like you can, so the equity, like I see like a DAO governance proposal as this equity, and perhaps it can be valuable if you're deciding whether or not to partner with a given protocol or something like that. But the other thing is like tokens themselves can have governance value. And that's like the curve gauges. There are a couple of protocols that are experimenting with this. I saw this protocol that I'm following, this really small protocol that I'm following. It's called Cawley and DAO. And they were talking about making a bribe index or a bribe index like token. So they have like index products, token products. And the proposal was, and I don't think it passed, or maybe it's still being debated or whatever. But the protocol was talking about, or someone proposed it, talking about whoever bribes the most tokens to the DAO will get included in this like index of 20 tokens or whatever. So it's like they were going to call it the bribe index. And perhaps that's not the most sophisticated way of governance, but it's one way of accruing value to token holders that doesn't require like this formal governance vote. The token then becomes valuable because it's receiving this bribe. So I think there's two kind of slightly different things. There's like governance in the traditional sense, and then there's my token is valuable because someone else wants to use the right to use the token, or someone wants to influence my use of this token. Those are two kind of subtle differences, but they both play into this governance thesis.
Yeah, it's interesting is that I think part of the issue is, look, I love the whole fact that that the bribe model has come out of all of this, and that it has changed how governance is being done. And obviously the bribes are similar to what we were talking about in Paladin earlier, which is, in other words, giving a project the ability to influence what happens with the protocol. Do you see things from the perspective of kind of all of the different models? I shouldn't assume you've looked at all of them, because you probably haven't been able to, but where are you seeing in this whole bribe governance model changes that are happening, or things that are happening to make it better, to improve it? What are you seeing in governance right now that you do, and why do you like it relative to this kind of model, to this bribing model?
Do Kwon and Luna, and that's a really interesting case, because I do think there are some threats around like this Luna UST mechanism and like the long-term viability of it. However, it has this insane potential to accrue value to people who are participating in the curve wars, holding convex, butterfly, whatever, however you're playing that narrative. So I feel two ways about it. That model is interesting because DeFi, so layer ones have managed to capture a lot of value. So I don't know what Luna's at today, like $40 billion market cap or something, where the biggest DeFi protocol is like $5 billion or $10 billion. So Luna can come into DeFi. Luna's real product is UST. They're a $40 billion protocol with a $16 billion stablecoin. That's their product, is this stablecoin. So then they can come in, they're valued as a layer one. They come into the ecosystem. They have a ton of money to throw around. They come into DeFi, and now they can really take a crack at trying to upset the current balance of DeFi and like curve liquidity. So I see that as this like weird, like they can threaten DeFi in a way that other DeFi protocols can't. Like, so Frax can throw around $1 billion of market cap, or Spell can throw around $500 million, but Luna can come in and throw around like $10 billion. So there's this outweight advantage that some like layer ones could have in DeFi based on just kind of market cap and this bribe-based model. I admit, I don't think this bribe-based model is perfect. And I think an outsider might see this as like sleazy or like anarchistic or too capitalistic or something like that. And probably there are more elegant models, but it is going to take a lot of gigabrains to explore the possibilities. Something that I think is interesting is the idea that protocols are going to have tokens in their treasuries to take advantage of some service. Right now on Curve, people want liquidity on Curve, so they add Curve and Convex to their treasury. I think there is like a path. The most elegant model to me is that like a protocol needs some type of service. To get this service, they need to own governance tokens in the other protocol. And because of that, the token will appreciate in price because they're going to hold tokens and they're not going to sell them, and they're going to need to buy them and drive the price up. So stuff like that.
Yeah. Quick question. Have you ever done a trade with UST on one side of the trade?
No.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Never, I'm trying to think if I've even seen it in a pair in a pool.
It's funny. I was literally just today, I was looking at the highest volume UST trading pairs. And interestingly enough, the biggest one was something weird. I can't remember what it was. The second biggest one, I think, was Binance USD to USDT. It looks like people are going, it's funny because everyone's, oh my God, we need decentralized stablecoins. And then they go and they trade their decentralized stablecoin into a stablecoin to get any utility out of it at all. So
we're all hypocrites. It's funny because I rant all the time about getting away from USDC to USDT. And I don't remember what was going on. There was something where I was like, had this moment of like concern about something I was doing, and I was worried about the stability of something. And I had a choice between two other algo stablecoins and USDC. And I picked USDC, and I was so mad at myself. I was like, Brad, what is wrong with you? But there was that moment where I was like, at least I know it'll be there.
Exactly. No, I feel a similar way. And I saw this poll on Twitter at one point. It was like, where would you keep your money if you were going to hold a stable coin? And it was like USDC, USDT, UST, and 50% of people picked UST. And I was like, this is probably just nonsensical, because USDC, you can just get your money back. You can go to Circle, the people who issue the stablecoin, and they'll just give you $1.
Exactly.
And then UST, there's no guarantees. If I'm trying to hold, like, I would, unless I really thought there was some like threat of the United States banning crypto or me getting my citizenship revoked or something, I would probably choose to hold a centralized stablecoin.
Look, I rant about it because I really want to reduce dependency on coins that have blacklist capabilities, just for the perspective of if part of the existing administration or the next administration decides they want to ban, I'd like to know that they can't take out an entire protocol just by blacklisting the wallet. And so that's the things I fear, is that they want to take out a few big protocols in this space, because you can blacklist a wallet on the protocol and you can do a pretty significant blow to DeFi overall. And so that's the thing that concerns me. So I'd like to see us doing more or less dependency. I'd like all of us and all protocols to at least start edging away. I don't expect it to happen overnight. So,
right. And decentralized stablecoin providers are tackling this problem in a lot of different ways. I don't think it's been completely cracked. And then there's this whole problem with the fact that everything so far even Luna has to be collateralized to some extent, right? You can't have more Luna outstanding or you can't have less Luna market cap than UST, or the model falls apart. Although Luna does admittedly it's more creative in the way it uses collateral than something like DAI. But maybe it's going to be one of those moments where until it happens, we're not going to understand why we need it so bad. And I doubt that. I guess it could happen, but I don't think it's an immediate threat for the US to blacklist any DeFi protocol wallet, for example. but it's
Right.
possible. And maybe when that happens, then we'll see a concerted effort from the community to converge around some type of decentralized stablecoin pairing and use that as like the base pair as opposed to USDT, USDC.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look,
To
I
be
would
fair,
love
DAI has a lot of trading volume against it. I know Coinbase even supports some DAI pairs.
Yeah. Look, and I frankly, from a decentralized or algorithmic stablecoin perspective, I'd like to see it spread out a bit. I'm a huge fan of Frax just because I've interviewed Sam Kazmian twice, and I really like him. You know what I mean? And I like his approach. And whenever I get an opportunity, I try to get him paired up with a smaller protocol that I think could use a boost from partnering with them because I
Right.
think I like the way he does things. And I just like that I'm a sucker for mission oriented kind of plays. And I think he's very mission, big picture, change the world oriented. And so for me, I like to see that drive and be successful. But anyway, I'd actually still like to see that spread about. I've dabbled a bit. I interviewed Publius from Bean twice as well. And that one, I remarked to him in my interview that I thought that there was probably a lot of brilliance behind his coin, but the complexity is next to impossible for the average person
Oh
to
my
figure out with the nomenclature. And I finally watched somebody actually, there's this guy, Steven, I'll post a note in the
Yeah,
show
the
notes.
calculator guy.
Yeah, he just
Twitter.
did a pretty good explanation of it. But even him, like a third of the way through, you can see him like his brain like locking up, trying to explain
Right.
the whole protocol. And then he got back on track, but I could see he was like going through the same, and I consider him pretty smart. You can see he's like going through the same thing we're all going through when we're trying to figure out Bean. But here's my question that leads me to is how, as investors, as we move into the real world, how much do you think we should understand what we're investing in? I mean, some of these protocols are like sick math, sick complexity, multiple factors feeding into whether or not they maintain their peg or they increase in value or their supply is diminishing or whatever. And a lot of people are just making investment choices without understanding things. As an investor, do you think it's important for us to really be able to understand what we're investing in? Or do you think we should just spread it out and hope for the best?
I've got a couple thoughts there. That's interesting. I think there's some layer of abstraction that no one understands or just a few people understand. If you get into the intricacies of Ethereum, like how well can you, like most people, including myself, can't really read a smart contract,
Correct.
especially if it was a lot, if it was more intricate, maybe a basic smart contract, I could get the gist of, right? But
Right.
something more intricate. And then within that, do you understand the mechanics behind the theory? And within that, even within that, do you understand like what's happening to on a computational level of Ethereum? And
Right.
like there's so many layers of abstraction that no one person can tell you the whole thing. So we have to rely on assumptions. Gabagool from Information Token talks about the idea of like trust layers in crypto. And to me, it's clear that we still need trust in crypto, whether it's like influencers, researchers, whoever it is, but someone who has like an ethical stance and a long-term commitment to the space. And like another good example would be like Zach XBT, who like exposes scammers in crypto. Like he's a trust layer, right? Ideally, we'd get to complete trustlessness, excuse me. The DYOR would be completely true. Everyone would research everything, but on some level, we're going to have to take people's word for things. So that's one component. However, like I do look at something like Bean and I'm like, man, it took me 2 days to write a Twitter thread about this thing. Like, how am I going to tell my buddy to invest in it when he doesn't understand it at all? One, there's a need in this space for documentation. And people, I think this is one of the places I've actually, without to toot my own horn too much, this is one of the places I've gotten a little bit of an edge in crypto is I'm actually pretty good at explaining things and pretty good at cutting out stuff that is unnecessary to understand like the main idea. So for Beanstalk, they have 3 different token kind of mechanisms and then governance. And to them, when I ever look at their documentation, and I think they're brilliant. There's like, they have 50 contributors in the DAO. It's wild, but I own some pods.
I won 10,000 pods in a poker game they held.
No way.
Yeah, man. But they're at like 620 million. I'll see you in a couple of years.
Yeah, that
Or
was
it
one
plays up
great
and I make them.
Anyway, so to me, you don't have to tell every little detail about your protocol. Like there's, you need to understand the basics, and then you can outline the documentation in the white paper, in the deeper part of your documentation. But what is your core value proposition? What is your unique selling point? How does this work in an ideal base case? That's what protocols need to have on their first page in 1,000 words. I would say 1,000 words or like Twitter thread length would be ideal. And
Yes.
then if someone else wants to get into that, then they like be my guest. But to
Right.
me, like I don't need to know the Beanstalk white paper. I don't need to read the Beanstalk white paper. I don't want to have to read the Beanstalk white paper to use their product. I want to
Exactly.
be like, what is it? How do I aid? What's the core mechanism? Like basic thing. And I think
Well, I
honestly,
think that's where they missed the
jump
boat.
with my thread, but
Yeah, look, I think that's part, and I told him this. I said, I think I understand you went with the bean theme in the naming of things, but I think you actually then abstracted away the functionality from things that people already understand in DeFi, right? So
Right.
you had to redefine them for people to then understand them and then connect back to things they already maybe understood at surface level. And I think I think that's the thing that makes them even more. It's already complex, even if it was normal terms. But I felt like that was another layer of complexity that wasn't necessary.
that's a great point. And I know they call it the farmer's market or the market when it could just be called the exchange.
Exactly.
So that is a good point.
The other thing, going to your kind of 1,000 words explaining it, I constantly rant about the fact that the protocols plop up a web page and it's one subtitle, the future of DeFi, whatever, some theme that people go, oh yeah, okay. And then it's interact. And then you get in the app and there's a swap mechanism or a staking mechanism or whatever the hell it is that they're doing. But users are looking at this stuff and going, I have no clue what you're doing with my money. Like zero idea what happens when I deposit here and how it functions and how it works. And I totally agree with you that this idea that for us to at least right now, we're in this mode of all of us are used to where's the link to the docs. And those of us that are willing to take that step and click the docs and read something to try to understand what the hell's going on instead of just my buddy told me it was cool. And so we will read the docs, but there is zero excuse for any protocol managing millions of dollars of people's money or billions of dollars of people's money not to talk about what the hell their purpose is and what they do on their website in a way that people can at least grasp conceptually what it is. And that to me
Right.
drives me nuts.
Yeah, I had a protocol reach out that wanted me to advise, or we were talking about some type of collaboration. And I haven't done any so far, just to be clear. But I looked at them and I couldn't figure out what like the selling point was. Like I couldn't figure out their value. I just couldn't do it. And I think that to be fair, that's part of their kind of marketing plan. But if I can't do that, I'm not gonna partner with you. If I myself can't convey what you guys are doing to my if I can't figure it out, how am I gonna advise you on educating users?
Yeah.
It's impossible. So I said, look, I don't typically do this ever. I haven't ever done this, and I'm not gonna do it with you either
Because I don't know what
like,
you're doing.
because what value am I gonna add to my readers, or I can't.
They just wanted your name.
It's just
I had one DM me a few days ago on Twitter, and I'm always happy to give feedback, provide guidance, and I advise a couple of projects here and there that I think are awesome from a people perspective and a concept perspective. And I had one reach out to me the other day, and he's like, hey, we're looking for advisors. Would love to see if we could be on your show, whatever. And I'm like, and I constantly get people offering to pay me to be on the show, but that's not what I do. And so he sends me a tweet that says something like, multi-chain, the most innovative protocol in DeFi, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, that sounds interesting. It's quite the claim, right? So I clicked through the website, no friggin' clue what the hell they're doing in the website. And it's all vague and we're going to make you money and set your own APRs and all this other stuff. And I climb into the documentation, and after wasting 20 minutes of my life reading between the lines in the documentation, I realize it's an Olympus fork. And they've modified the documents, and they've modified and tweaked something related to how you can alter APRs and set your own APR within the boundaries of their overall formula. So they had done a little bit of customization, but basically it was just an Olympus fork.
Right.
And they had taken already across chain code and saying, we're multi-chain, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, yeah, I agree. Real quick, back to UST. I tweeted today that sometimes I'm a little snarky, but whatever. I didn't tag either of them, but I said, does anybody else feel something along the lines of, does anybody else get the same vibe from Doe that we were getting from Danielle? And by that, I meant there's this kind of, I'm going to take on the world for you. And there's this centralized mechanism to that. And I'm a big believer in strong founders and betting on founders, right? I've been in startups and tech for 27 years. So I understand how that dynamic works. But at the same time, I think we've all learned our lessons in this space that dependency on one person and their decision making may not always be the best thing.
Right.
Not disclosing that a convicted felon is your treasury manager is probably not the best strategy. And so I had a few people pile in on that saying, yeah, centralized, taking it further than I really wanted to go. But the other day he tweeted, it's funny because I saw a tweet from him saying something like, we all must stand together and lift up DeFi together, blah, blah, blah. And then I saw a tweet from him saying, by my hand, die will die. And I'm like, wait a minute, what is it? Are we all in this together or are you out here trying to kill off protocols? And frankly,
Right.
by his actions, it feels like he's trying to kill off stablecoin protocols. Like I saw Frax partnering with him and I'm like, Sam, I don't know, man.
Right. I felt the
They
same.
just
I
be
got.
closer to be eaten, dude.
I felt the same way about the butterfly partnership. Yeah. If everything decentralized partners, are we decentralized still? No. Yeah, man. I feel the same way. I talked this same project that I alluded to previously that I couldn't figure out what they actually did. They had some messaging where it was like, I think it's the people. When I look at my investment or at why I'm on this team, it's because of the people. And I think investing in a founder, investing in a team is like great pre-token, pre-product market fit.
Yeah, yeah.
But once you have a protocol and a product market fit, like then the goal should be to take that centralized risk and move away from it and figuring out how you can get to a steady state of a protocol with immutable code that just does its job. And it's true, like magnanimous founders can create tremendous movements of people and they have huge powerful to create like memes around them that can like rally incredible amount, billions of dollars in like retail capital. But that's not the goal. I shouldn't want to invest in a person if I'm investing in a liquid token, right? Like you've already done your job. You've created a protocol that works, I hope. And I'm investing in that. At this point, I'm not going to invest in you. If I was going to make an angel investment, I would probably feel a different way, but I'm not looking to invest in people. I'm looking to invest in
That's awesome.
code that applies leverage across crypto ecosystems. That's the value point. That's my thesis. My thesis is not on like Danielle said. Right?
Yeah. And look, that should be the evolution of all of these to what you're talking about. On the other extreme is, have you looked at liquidity very much?
No.
So Liquidity's lending protocol, LUSD stablecoin, actually had some pretty good success. It's motoring along now. But the most interesting thing to me about them, I interviewed Robert Lauco, the founder, early, about a year and 2 months ago, 13 months ago, something like that. He went for radically decentralized. So they wrote their model for the lending and the stablecoin and everything. And when they launched, that was it. There were only a couple of variables on the protocol that they could change, but it was a radical decentralization. Launch, release, it's out. We can't change it. And they had a good amount of liquidity coming in there. I haven't looked at where they're standing today, but I did see recently an announcement of some other variations and versions of their protocol that they're launching. But that's the other extreme. It's okay. I had early investors, had some VCs come in and angel investors. They backed me. We built the system, we tested it, we audited it, and we're going to release it. And if it's wrong, if it's broken, we can't change it. So we'll see what happens, which I found fascinating and gutsy in a way, and also really cool that something could just be, it's going to work or it's not going to work. We'll see what happens. Of course, it's risky for the initial investors, but
I think there's some like weird potential universe in the future where there are no tokens and then there's just a bunch of protocols that exist to facilitate peer-to-peer interactions on the blockchain. And maybe there's stable coins or whatever. Bitcoin still exists, Ethereum still exists to pay your gas fees, but perhaps like a new project just launches and they're like, look, we've created this opportunity to lend peer-to-peer. And there's no like capital, there's no incentive behind that. You just have some immutable code on the blockchain. It's like an open source public good. So
Yeah.
I thought about that idea and that the potential for that to happen a little bit. But yeah, man, what a trip.
Yeah, anyway, everyone has a different approach to it. That's funny. Real quick, I made a note. You were talking earlier about kind of when we were talking about complexity, I saw, and you were talking about Ethereum and people not understand everything about it. I saw a tweet thread the other day from a developer that was, I think, leaving the Ethereum Foundation, talking about how underpaid the team is there and saying that the creep of the technology and the building that's happening and people leaving is a real risk because he doesn't believe there's any one person that understands everything that's going on under the hood in Ethereum anymore.
I think I saw that. So yeah, look at that. The core Ethereum dev team has to rely on some level of trust or abstraction to understand exactly what's going on. It's a natural state. I think crypto might exist to take trust out of the equation, but you need to put the trust layer back in some way. And I think ideally you take it out to give it back on some level, right? Like we're taking trust away in centralized parties, in people, so that we can have it again between ourselves and interact with each other. But yeah, some definitely philosophical questions.
In terms of kind of the research you've been doing, what are some things that you've been looking at, thinking about lately that project wise or evolution of the space, whatever that you're excited about?
Yeah, right now I'm definitely in a phase of my investing career where I've moved into a lot more smaller caps and a lot more diversified plays.
Interesting.
Because I see this as this kind of period in the market. I don't know if we're in a multi-year bear market or if it'll kick off again, but I see that as like the highest asymmetry bets I can make with my personal portfolio. And then simultaneously moving to having a bigger audience now, I have a lot more access to founders and I have a lot more access to resources and can chat with people. That's a really cool thing to experience and to talk to people that I think are smart and be able to communicate and just reflect philosophically or financially around all these things. But yeah, to me, like, this is where in bull market stuff kicks off a lot more than you think it would. And with a distributed portfolio, with the potential for stuff to have 100x upside or something, I think investing in smaller caps, like micro caps, even in founders that you understand, trust, perhaps pre-product market fit, right? Perhaps this is one of those places where we can go back to being people oriented because we want to invest in someone who will drive through walls to achieve something meaningful. Right. But yeah, that's my now I have 20 portfolio, 20 cryptos in my portfolio under 10 million market cap.
That's what I was just going to ask you. What's the level that you're calling that? That is some interesting bets. How are you finding them?
I think I have some good, like, deal flow isn't the right word, right? Because I'm making liquid token investment, but I don't know. I just look at stuff. I'm on crypto Twitter way too much. People reach out to me. So I generally, if it's not like a GameFi project and they're not trying to pay send me a $50 gift card to write a Twitter thread about their project, I'll generally take a little look. And sometimes stuff piques my interest. Like it was just yesterday, there's this bridge aggregator, cross-chain bridge aggregator. And I was like, man, I haven't really heard of anyone doing that. Let's take a look.
Bridge aggregator.
Yeah.
That's like some compounded risk to me.
Yeah, I guess it depends on like how you silo the risk, but you're right.
That sounds like holy shit.
But it's just about aggregating the best rates across a bridge.
Oh, okay.
You're exposed to like multiple layers of abstract.
Okay.
Right?
Okay. That's cool.
But yeah, interesting conversation about the bridges too. But yeah, just being curious in the space, being willing to talk to smaller accounts, smaller people that have just not quite made it yet. And you have to imagine that some of these things will perform like about as well as a broad market index of crypto, and then some will outperform. I think there are some cool opportunities, cool asymmetric bets to be taken when no one knows about some founder doing something that's interesting.
Yeah, look, I think that makes total sense. And if you're not looking for the quick buck, but you're looking for kind of things that you think are interesting or powerful models that could have those moments, that's certainly something that can make the difference in an entire portfolio across the board. I'm sure you don't have a checklist of formula for these micro caps, but what are the things that are dawning on you as you're looking at them that are making a difference for your decision making process when you're investing? Do you notice yourself being drawn to somebody with a ton of experience? Do you care if they're a non or not? Are you interested if the protocol is complex, or are you more interested in a product concept that's not been here before, or we haven't seen the likes of? Kind of what are the things you think are drawing you in to make the buy decision on those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. To me, I think the first thing that jumps out is like the idea itself. If I feel like it's a unique idea or something that I feel like hasn't been executed successfully on. So I start there if it's intriguing. And then there are a couple of theses that I'm working on and thinking about broadly. So I think about how they fit into my like thesis around crypto and why I think crypto will be successful in coming years. So I think those are like the first two parts. Then to me, it's a lot about, first of all, like I've never really engaged in this style of investing before, so maybe I'll be completely unsuccessful at this. We've got to keep that in mind. But
Imagine with the content you create, but go ahead.
yeah, thank you. And then it's like talking to founders, poking around Discord, stuff like that. I think you can get a really good feel for a project based on the community and based on how a founder engages with you. Like when a founder wants to dodge a difficult question or they don't get back to you about a difficult question, that's something that it's really a red flag to me. Doxed, undoxed. Doxed are like semi-doxed. I prefer, but I guess I'd honestly invest in an undoxed founder. Like I'm not too picky, but I do think undoxed face kind of competitive advantages in networking and finding investors, stuff like that.
Sure.
How facets of a project intrigue me, and I think you got to do some decent due diligence. Or sometimes you like an idea, you think that the founder is smart, you just take a punt, right? That's the beauty of the strategy. You're not deploying too much of your capital at one time.
Place. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you take a broader approach to things.
That's interesting. That's interesting. In terms of, you were talking, and I won't push you on this if you don't want to, but can you divulge a little bit for us of when you talk about your thesis and why you think crypto is poised for future success, what are the thoughts that you have, and what are you thinking about in general for your thesis?
That's a great question. And I swear every week I have some new thoughts, or I realize that something was invalidated by something else.
Good.
Governance is one I mentioned previously, bullish on people being able to create value accrual mechanisms to their token that aren't like just a protocol fee getting piped to a treasury that gets distributed or some type of buyback or something. I'm bullish on creating utility for the token itself. I'm bullish on consolidation. So I think first movers and category leaders will be successful. So I try to find people who are doing really unique things or creating really unique primitives and invest in those protocols. What else? I believe that retail money will find less complex things. If you look at something, what's a good example? Like Dopex. Dopex has this dual token model. They have a liquidity model. They have a rebate token. They have a stable coin that they're going to implement. To me, that's something that I'm a bit hesitant to invest in. And people really like Dopex. So maybe I'll be totally wrong on this one. But to me, I would prefer some way that I could elegantly invest in this product or this narrative without having to figure out what the optimal strategy around all these tokens and LPing and stuff is. So like structured products is another one that I'm bullish on. So a good example of that would be like Butterfly, which kind of handles like the value of their governance themselves, and it takes the value of their treasury assets and figures out how to shuttle that value back into the token. So some of these structured products. So like index co-op is another one that I'm looking at right now, which is they create these indexes, and now you can invest in Solana, Luna, Avalanche, or you can invest in a DeFi index.
Yeah, it's the mutual fund of the DeFi space. Yeah. No, and I think that makes a lot of sense that these simplified products are going to be important. I think they're also going to be really important as we try to step deeper and deeper into the regular real world, whatever you want to call it, people that aren't here. I think that's an important factor, is having it structured simply. Yeah, makes sense.
I agree. And to be fair, I think there are a lot of smart, sophisticated people in the space, and in the world of traditional equities, 80% of equities are owned by institutions. I think there's a case for not even needing like retail adoption for crypto to gain,
Sure.
huge market share. So that's something I'm thinking about a lot is it okay to invest in complexity, or should I invest in something that's retail friendly? And there's probably ways to make money in both of these things. But
Yeah, totally agree. Do you enjoy more, when you were talking earlier, talking about your interactions with people, do you think you enjoy more the research and the climbing into the nuts and bolts of the things you're learning about and the content you're creating, or the actual investing?
that's a good question. I feel like I'm a horrible trader. Like sometimes I'll try to like trade momentum and I just like lose half my portfolio.
I know, I know exactly. All of us are out here
And
being horrible traders. It's okay.
in crypto, like everyone like wants to be a trader, or LARPs is a trader. So there's this horrible, motivation to do it. But yeah, I think I like both, to be honest. I like both, and I like that researching builds my business as well. That's a confounding factor that the average person might not have. But shoot, just forgot what I was gonna say. Maybe
I don't know. What you enjoy more? You said both. Creating and researching, or investing?
I swear I had a
Good, man. It's all good. We all have brain farts. It's Friday afternoon. It's all good. Although I don't think there really are any Fridays in DeFi anymore. So
No, not at all.
no, days of the week are irrelevant, except that I have to drive my kids every morning. That's about the only way I know it's a day of the week.
Right. Yeah, now I forget the days of the week practically. Although I've been trying to like really isolate my weekends, I'm gonna be honest.
Oh, that's good.
Like I really try to I try to not send out any content on weekend on Twitter. I try to disengage completely.
Yeah,
Sometimes it's tricky, but I really think that's important to prevent burnout.
Look at all that self-control. That's amazing. I don't have that yet.
And then this actually happened one time. I like went camping on the weekend that Andre Cronje announced that he was resigning from crypto.
Of course.
I came back and just lost 20% of my portfolio.
Oh, that's ugly.
That's the price of good mental health. So
There you go. There you go. Of course, the crushing mental health blow when you got back. What do you have any bias chain wise?
Yeah, man. I think EVM, I've explored some like non-EVM chains, but I'm definitely biased towards EVM chains just for like
Same.
composability and like UX reasons. Ethereum is the clear category leader in smart contract platforms for now. And I would even maybe say Ethereum plus scaling solutions is the clear category leader. I think that it's possible that all L2s turn into kind of Ethereum side chains that settle back to Ethereum or incorporate.
Yeah, it just becomes a big storage facility for.
But yeah, I'm totally biased towards Ethereum, although I'm probably too poor to use it effectively.
That's good. I find myself, it's funny, I find myself spending more time on Phantom because I've built some relationships there, and I like their community a lot.
Phantom has a phenomenal DeFi community. Phantom has managed to attract some like really smart people, really like grassroots kind of dev.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Still got a lot on Phantom, playing some small caps over there, doing some yield farming, stuff like that.
Yeah, me too. I've had a lot of interaction with the Spirit Swap team. I've had a lot of interaction. Well, I had an interview with Justin Bibas at Byte Masons and Reaper, who's just a really cool guy, and I like his philosophy. And he's out there like training developers that may or may not work for him. Like he's got a Discord where he's just training developers in responsible Solidity development. And Simone Pomposi, who's the CMO there, got to know him really well. And he and I have done a few things together. And I always felt FTM alerts, everybody over there. I've not had a negative interaction on Phantom. First of all, tell us about yourself. Tell us where you're from, and then tell us generally why you are where you are and what you're doing and all that. Let's do that.
I'm originally
Last.
from Chicago area-ish, Madison, Wisconsin. I grew up and went to school in Minneapolis and did studied finance there, TradFi background. And then I got the bug to live and work internationally after that. When I graduated, I moved to Puerto Rico, was working at a solar company, a startup there, crossed over to a digital marketing company. I was doing both content production, editing, managing a content team there, and also doing some finance stuff, even some PPC stuff and email outreach. So I was a jack of all trades there, and then got into crypto in kind of 2020. Got into crypto, I should say, because I had some Bitcoin and Ethereum that I bought at the Pico top in 2017. And then I decided to start this email newsletter because I was already researching and writing and doing kind of due diligence for myself, but saw that there was a hole in the space for really good content. Started producing some content for Twitter, and that went really well. And that was just August when I started the newsletter. And now me and my colleague, Joey Campbell, we run a newsletter that has a free version and a paid version. And then I'm on Twitter a lot as well.
So what I love about that part of it is that you went from the guy doing content marketing for other firms to actually turning the content marketing into the business, because the content is the business. So in fact, it becomes a matter of, I'm still creating the content that I would have created to help market something else. Now I'm creating the content to market the other content, which I love that a lot, because you had the skills and experience and understood the things that kind of work and get people's attention from having done that at a digital marketing agency. And then you turned the business of kind of third-party content marketing into actually being the content and marketing it. And that to me that's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. Yeah, it's wild. I remember I listened to the famous Naval podcast about how to get rich without getting lucky or something. And I was still working at this digital marketing agency. I've always had this kind of entrepreneurial instinct. I've done a couple of ventures myself, but was just working full time for this company. And he introduced the concept of like leverage to me, and the idea of if you have like capital, you can leverage it, you can grow it, you can have people working under you that represent leverage, or you can have like media as a form of leverage as well. And I was like, the idea of zero marginal cost of reproduction. So I knew if I could get a schedule of like consistently produce content, then I was going to do the exact same amount of work for one person or for 1 million people. But you have this huge upside potential for doing the exact same work. So then I was like, I quit my job like a week later.
You were not messing around. You just dove in. That's amazing, man.
Yeah.
That's great. That's crazy. And then how did it go? What was that road like at the beginning?
Yeah, it was wild. I remember
what world were you when you started, by the way?
When I started, I actually was driving. I bought a red Jeep in Mexico, and I drove it from Oaxaca to New York City over the summer.
What?
And visited. I did the Mexico leg with a Mexican buddy, and then I was visiting friends and stuff, visited my parents, visited my college friends.
There's a buddy movie in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's his birthday, actually. It's his birthday today.
Nice.
But yeah, so I was doing that, listening to a lot of podcasts. And that's when it happened. August 2nd, 2021, I sent out that first email. It was about, I feel like it was about the Polychain hack, maybe, or Poly network hack. I don't exactly remember what it was about. And
in.
I was actually in my hometown, Madison, Wisconsin, when I sent that out, but I had been on the verge of starting for a couple of weeks at that point.
And then it was sink or swim.
And then I still had the outlet of being able to write a little bit of content. So I could get I had set up an arrangement with my boss where it was like pay per word for like just producing SEO articles.
Oh, that's cool.
So I had this little outlet I knew but I had kind of given up all of my like salaried responsibility. But yeah, I saw that as being like, I didn't tell anybody I quit. I told my girlfriend I quit, but I didn't tell my parents, didn't tell anyone else I quit but I knew, and it sounds bad, and this probably is horrible advice, but I knew I couldn't do it if it was not sink or swim.
Yeah, no, I think that's awesome advice, actually. That's something I tell people all the time.
Because people said, work on it for a year, set up. Man, I just couldn't. I just am not wired that way. It's got to be, I'm all in,
Yeah.
or not. And I just had to do it. And then it worked.
I used to say to people that even when I worked at jobs, and it hasn't been a lot of my career, but when I've been a senior executive at a company, that the people that worked for me, I would do a plunge into the deep end style thing. People fresh out of college, I would throw them straight into go do this. And if you have
Right.
questions, come to me. You are going to hate me because you're terrified and you're angry that I am forcing you to learn this shit. But guess what? At the end of this, you're going to love me because you're going to have awesome, amazing skills. And
Right.
even in the security of a salary that these people had, there's that fear of, but when you've got no choice and you have to deliver something within a time frame, either to eat or to keep your job or whatever, it makes a huge difference, man. I think that's actually awesome advice. I wouldn't
Yeah.
tell
I think if you
people
can
to
pay
quit
the
their
bills,
job.
that was a
Yeah,
big part. Yeah. I had a little, I knew I had a year of living expenses saved up.
nice.
So I knew I had that covered.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can't pay your bills, you have 50 grand in debt,
So
probably don't quit the
probably
job right
keep your
away.
day job. But yeah, I think depends on who you are, but if you're driven, if you're wired that way, yeah, it's the best way to learn something. It's the best way to commit.
I actually believe most humans are capable of it. They just don't push themselves into it. And I
Right.
think I've seen it in my career that I can, it's going to sound like patting me on the back. So I'll probably delete this from the story, but from the show. But there was a woman that had been working, I was working at a company in the travel industry, and I had taken the job because I had just had a kid and I needed some cash and in the bank, and they were building, I had to rebuild a technology platform that they were building. And I was also running marketing simultaneously, which was chaos. But anyway, there was a woman who'd worked at this company for 15 years, and she sent me an email, and she worked like in administration. It wasn't a giant company, it was a small company, but she'd been there just doing menial, meaningless shit. And she sent me an email summarizing some research I'd asked for. And it was this beautifully written, just, some people that just, when they write, that just so persuasive or it's so communicative, like you, it just comes across beautifully. And I was like, holy crap, this is like brilliant. And so I went to her boss and I said, I'm going to have her start writing content for us. And she came to me and she said, is it okay to do this? I said, yes. And so she started writing content for us and she loved it. She enjoyed it. And she was passionate about it, was having fun doing it. And then one day we're in a company meeting and I praised her and said, this woman has picked up the mantle. She's handling all of our content now. She's beautifully doing a great job. People are engaging with us. It's working, blah, blah, blah. And she worked for us for another year, 6 months to a year, something like that. And then she went off on her own to write and great content.
Right.
And she'd always been a photographer and wanted to be a photographer professionally. And she went out and did that. And she now lives in Latin America and she's living the life she'd always dreamed of living. But she came to me on her last day on the job and she broke down crying. And she said, I just want to thank you because nobody ever like said, you can do this. And nobody ever praised me and
Right.
recognized me in front of other people. This allowed me to break out of all these years of crap that I've been living. And the point being that I think that a lot of people are capable. They're just languishing. So,
Right. Yeah, I feel a similar way. For me, it was like I was waiting for someone to give me kind of permission to do it. And I
right.
remember I drove Denver to Minneapolis where I went to school, and I stayed with a buddy, and I was talking to him about how I like really wanted to do this, and he was like, "Do you want to quit? I give you permission. Like you can do it." And I was like, "Thanks, thanks." That was like that's what I'm looking for. Sometimes, yeah, you like I don't know. I just needed someone to say that to me because
Yeah.
no one would ever be like, yeah, you should quit your job.
Yeah.
No, you're waiting for something. So that was big for me.
I think we're conditioned to expect to ask permission for that kind of
Right.
thing. And it's so cool that you got your permission and then you jumped into a trustless world where you don't have to ask permission. That's cool.
Right. Yeah, plus now that I'm doing what I'm doing, now I like realize how valuable I am. Like last July, I made like $3,000 or something. And now I would not accept a job offer for $200,000 because I understand what my value is, what like that upside is. Yeah. So that's huge. And I think, man, if you're smart, if you're driven, like, and lucky, I cannot deny that there's like a huge element of luck and like the timing and stuff of all of this. And the people who chose to retweet me, that's like a lot of luck. But yeah, I think people can do it, and I think people underestimate that their value in a lot of cases.
Totally agree. Hey, so question I ask everybody on the show is pick, one or two projects, usually people that you admire most in crypto or that you think have the most impact and why you think they're so important to the future of what we're doing.
Cool. That's such a good question. That's such a hard question. Man, I gotta say, one is just like this might be a cop-out answer, but Vitalik, like what a dude. That guy has created more value than that guy arguably has created more value than any single human being in the world.
Yeah.
And in 20 years, it's probably going to be a lot more obvious.
Yeah.
I guess Satoshi is another one that could be in that same camp. So that's my cop-out answer for my first one.
Not a cop-out. That's actually, it's a common answer. It's a valid answer. Interestingly, who was the most common answer was prior to a couple of weeks ago?
What?
Andre Cronje.
Ooh, now he's not popping up so much, huh? Yeah, man, you can't, like, the guy's a genius. I can't deny it. Supposedly he's still working on Keeper though. So,
okay.
That's good for my 4-year locked bags.
That's good.
My rugged bags.
Look, I just think he handled that irresponsibly. His communication was just pitiful.
I want to say Packy McCormick as well. Actually, I think he's been hired at A16Z, but he writes a newsletter called Not Boring about Web3 and investing. And I think he was an angel investor. Now he's a partner at A16Z. But to me, he's revolutionary for what he's done to align interest in the space, because he has a newsletter. He invests about things that he's really excited about, and then he educates the public on these things that create value, and talking about that trust layer between like trustless crypto and a public that is not going to understand the full stack. Like, I think he's done some really incredible work on onboarding people to crypto and serving as one of those kind of trust layers in crypto.
That's probably most unique answer yet.
Yeah.
What founders have you followed or interacted with that you were most impressed by?
Croissant Eid is starting this project called Bakery DAO that I'm really impressed with his work. He's a really good guy, young guy founding and working with kind of creating this like new DAO layer that people can interact with. Phenomenal dude that I've enjoyed talking with. The Flying Dutchman.eth, Andrew, I don't think has a Doc last name. He's the founder of Cawley and DAO, who I've talked to a couple of times. Really good guy. Got a really strong thesis around structured products and how that can onboard a lot of new assets into crypto. I really like Cypher ETH, who's creating kind of this experiment around generative art and in the NFT space, and who's really gotten me to. He's really red-pilled me a little bit on the NFT space and the potential and even, new aspects around governance and new models for governance and creating an organization that creates revenue and value for token holders while simultaneously like being a force for good and a force for the ideals of crypto. So a couple, none of them are like
no, that's all good
level yet. But those are a couple founders.
I like those. I think those will get people excited. I like that. Somebody with your perspective, your insights, I think it's great for us to hit those that might be, right? I think that's cool. That's awesome. Man, thank you so much for being so generous with your time. I'll probably get this out at the latest Tuesday. I'm on a tighter schedule now than I have been in the past for getting these out. Anything you want to tell us where people should find you? I'll put it in the show notes and say it, but just go ahead and say it for the tag.
Jack Niewold on Twitter, cryptopragmatist.com.
Niewold.
OLD, correct. And cryptopragmatist.com for our newsletter.
Yeah. All right, man. Thank you so much